we just talk to you about like the mood of caucus, just how you're feeling about everything now after the by-election losses?
Sure. I mean, how I'm feeling is really focused. So I think you and I have talked about this before. My priority for this session is getting that water legislation through the House of Commons and over to Senate, and hopefully law before any election occurs. Obviously, the loss of the by-election isn't the greatest news for Liberals, but certainly it's a sharp reminder of the work that we have to do ahead. So I'm focused on what I really want to achieve, which is making sure that we have legislation that protects fresh water for First Nations people for generations to come.
What's the holdup of that? What's the main barrier?
Well, I mean, right now, I would say actually right now it's under study in the committee, and the comments that we're receiving are pretty positive, including from First Nations leaders themselves. I suspect there will be some amendments that will be proposed through the committee process, and I'm looking forward to receiving them. I've always said along the way that we'll be open to any amendments that strengthen the goal of the bill. And so the sooner I can get that report back, the sooner I can work on securing amendments from Cabinet and hopefully through third reading and into the Senate. And I've been working really closely with the House Leader's Office. She knows this is a priority for First Nations leaders and First Nations communities. I could go on and on about the bill, but I'll save you that.
The Conservatives say they plan to trigger a non-confidence vote next week. I just wonder what you think of that and how that could affect legislation like this that you are trying to get through, and that may take more time.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I mean, listen, the Conservatives are doing what Conservatives do, and obviously we are in a Westminster system and in a minority government, and that is not to be completely unexpected. What's more disappointing is that for the NDP, who have often talked about the rights of Indigenous people, the need to work collaboratively and co-developed in a way that co-develops legislations like this, are willing to put all of that at risk. And so, you know, we'll see what happens next week with the confidence vote. But I can tell you right now, the government's focus, in particular my focus, but I know the entire government's, is to get this important legislation through that many communities are relying on.
Are you ready to hit the campaign trail?
I am always ready to hit the campaign trail. Yes, I've been ready for months. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thoughts on Minister Rodriguez?
You should really talk to him about that. That's really his decision.
Mais quand même, ça représente quand même une perte, non, pour le caucus du Québec?
Et ça fait 20 ans que Pablo est en politique fédérale. Je pense qu'il n'y a personne qui va le blâmer de dire « Je vais aller relever un autre défi » parce qu'il ne s'en va pas s'asseoir dans son sofa chez lui, sur le bord du poêle. Il s'en va relever un défi important et pour ça, on ne peut que lui en être reconnaissant.
Est-ce que vous craignez d'autres départs? Est-ce que vous craignez d'autres départs?
I mean, I certainly won't blame Pablo for wanting to take on another challenge, because what he's doing is very challenging. He's not going home in retirement. He's going to do something that's very important, and for that I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Any update on that?
Well, we're going to speak to it at second reading this afternoon. It's a very important piece of legislation, Bill C-66. It addresses a number of really important recommendations that require legislative change in the National Defence Act in response to Madam Justice Arbour's recommendations, and in particular Recommendation 5 regarding concurrent jurisdiction over sexual assault cases involving members of the Canadian Armed Forces. And it also, I think, is going to take some very substantive measures as well to improve the independence of judicial actors within the military justice system.
What do you make of Minister Rodriguez's decision to leave the cabinet?
I think Pablo Rodriguez has been a good friend, a great colleague, and an outstanding minister. I know he's a great Canadian, but I also know he's a great Quebecer. I know he feels very strongly about assuming responsibility and leadership in Quebec, and although I will deeply regret losing him as a colleague, I very much look forward to his continued contribution.
How confident do you feel heading into a non-confidence vote next week?
I'm really focused on the work that we've got to do. I think we have a responsibility to Canadians. The legislation that we're introducing today is important to every member of the Canadian Armed Forces. That's really what my focus is. And quite frankly, parliamentary processes will run their natural course. But I'm really focused on, and I know my government's focused on delivering for Canadians.
You can make an announcement today. What about the timing of Pablo's announcement today? Does that have anything to do with the by-election losses? Pablo's decision?
No. Listen, I've talked to Pablo about his decision. I think it was not an easy decision for him, but he takes what he believes very sincerely is his obligations to Quebec and to the Liberal Party of Quebec in order to pursue this opportunity to lead that party. I think that was I think a very difficult decision, but I support Pablo in the decision. I think that the timing of his decision is really tied to beginning the process of seeking the leadership of the Liberal Party in Quebec. And I don't believe it's in any way connected to any other thing that's going on.
What does this mean for your
Blair,
Quebec
can
seat?
you speak to what happened in the accidents at Guilbeault?
I've briefed on it just recently. Two of our labs, 8x8s, 16 members of the Canadian Armed Forces in those labs that was involved in the collision. The 16 members all received some minor injury. They were all transported to medical facilities. They've been examined. They've all been released. The injuries are relatively minor in nature, and the accident's being investigated.
Mr. Wilkinson, how do you feel facing a non-confidence vote?
The nature of a minority parliament is there are always going to be non-confidence votes, but I think that Canadians want Parliament to work. There are a number of public opinion polls that have.
How ready are you to
If it comes to that, then we've all actually got to get ready very quickly. But I actually think that most of the parties, other than perhaps Mr. Poilievre and the Conservative Party, are really focused on making this place better.
Mr. Blanchet said that the Bloc is going to vote against the Conservative motion. So how could you win the Bloc support? Would you promise them anything in return?
That's really up to the House leaders. They have conversations all the time. But, in a minority parliament, nobody has a majority, and so there are conversations that go on between different parties. That's the nature of minority parliament. So I think those conversations are normal.
Do you have any comments about, Pablo Rodriguez's announcement today, about the timing of his announcement given the by-election loss?
Sorry, whose announcement? Pablo?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think he's announcing tomorrow, or at least my understanding is he was doing an announcement tomorrow. But I've heard certainly, I haven't talked to him, but I've heard certainly about what he's doing. I don't know that it had any relationship to the by-election. Obviously, if he's going to seek the leadership of a provincial political party, he has to move on and start to do that work. But I would say he's been a fantastic colleague, and he's been a great fighter for Quebec and for Canada. So.
Does it worry you to be losing another member of cabinet in the last couple of months?
Well, I mean, he's somebody who's been a strong part of the government, but he also will be a strong ally as leader of the Liberal Party of Quebec if he wins. So.
Merci. Monsieur Champagne, Monsieur Blanchet dit que le Bloc va
Voter avec vous sur la motion.
Bonne chose.
Donc, vous êtes soulagé?
Écoutez, c'est une bonne chose. C'est pas moi qui suis soulagé, je pense que c'est l'ensemble du pays. Les gens veulent de la stabilité. Les gens ont envoyé des députés pour travailler jusqu'au mois d'octobre l'année prochaine. Donc, c'est une bonne chose. C'est la voie de la raison. Il faut travailler ensemble. Il faut avancer. Puis, il faut passer moins de temps à parler de politicaillerie, de ce qui se passe dans cet édifice-là, puis parler plus des enjeux qui touchent les Canadiens. C'est l'abordabilité, c'est le logement. C'est des choses qui concernent les gens dans leur quotidien. Alors, tant mieux, parce que ce qu'on veut, c'est qu'on puisse continuer à travailler. Et on l'a dit, nous, notre focus va toujours être sur livrer pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes.
Is your party
on Rogers, do you have any competition concerns about the MLC announcement?
I'll come back to you on that.
Here it is already made to the NDP in addition in terms of farm care and dental care to get them to vote against the Conservative motion?
I think we've worked very collaboratively in Parliament. I was the House Leader when things started off, and every day was about finding common ground, and that's something that we're going to continue to do. But it needs to make sense, and we have some very big things to get done. Dental care is the largest federal program ever introduced. It's going exceptionally well, but it requires a lot of attention and work to make sure that it continues to go that way. We have pre-authorization coming in November. That's going to be huge. We have to get that right. We signed a memorandum of understanding with BC, but we have 12 other jurisdictions to go, and we have to see those drugs flow. At the same time, we're dealing with a crisis in primary care where we're working with provinces and territories on trying to deal with everything from foreign credential recognition to acceleration of bringing folks into the workforce. So there's a lot already. So why are you bringing it forward? Is it an ego play? Is it politics? Or are you actually trying to make the country better? And to me, it seems like there's an awful lot of politics around this place and not a lot of discussion about how to make people's lives better. And I think that's fundamentally out of touch with what Canadians want. So, if their conversation is rooted in reality and reasonable proposals to make people's lives better, I'm all there for it. And I think there's a lot of things we have to be doing in health, but that's kind of where it's centered from.
Minister, is your government and your leader right now taking this by-election loss seriously? And the reason I ask is because yesterday when we were talking to people, we heard a lot about, oh, it's just a by-election, there wasn't voter turnout, and now we're hearing that it wasn't even discussed at caucus today. So is there actually any lessons being taken from this loss?
Well, it sucks to lose. And I've tried winning and losing, and I prefer winning. And it is very heavy. There's no question. And you're always in a state of introspection. I think the question is, what do you do? For me, it's to go back to the conversations I had with people. I mean, I was in Verdun. I was in St. Paul's. I had knocked on doors in those places. And folks are finding life tough. And the reality is, it's everywhere. It's tough. And so, there's a question of what you do with that. And I think some people's answer is to hold up a mirror and say things are awful and rile people up and get them really angry. I think what we're trying to do is to make things appreciably better. To say, what can I do to make things better? How can I improve things? And that's what I'm squarely focused on. But yeah, of course, it deeply affects us. I think anytime you have a loss, it does. But the lesson that I have, and having been around this place, it'll be my 8th federal election coming up, is you can't ride the crises in and out and the highs up and the lows low. You got to stay level, and you got to stay focused on practical matters, on how you help people. And so maybe that's kind of the level that you're hearing. It's not that it's not affecting you. It's a question of you have to be practical about it, and that you have to be focused on solutions and on making things better.
Is your party leadership actually dealing with it if they're not even discussing it as a caucus?
Well, I think the idea that we're not discussing it as a caucus is a bit silly, right? I mean, of course we're talking about it as a caucus. We're talking about this stuff all the time. The question is, what terms do we talk about it when you come to things like a microphone, or how do I talk about it with volunteers, or how do I talk about it with staff? I think what you focus on is, we're in a world right now where things can be completely upturned in a month. What is the reality today is ancient history a month from now. What keeps you level is to stay in the moment you're in and ask, what can you concretely do to make things better? And that's what I wake up and I'll be evaluated like that, like all of us, on, in these incredibly difficult times. What did you do to make things better? How did you meet that moment? And including, how truthful you are in what you're experiencing. And it's a bloody hard time to be a human right now. I mean, that's just the simple reality. And how we deal with that and what kind of solutions we come up with, that's how we should be evaluated, I think. The other side, I mean, look, they're very good at whipping up anger, but what the heck's their answer?
But what about your party's answer? I mean, we're hearing a lot of, we're going to work that harder, we're listening to Canadians, and that just doesn't seem to be translating at the polls. I mean, do you really feel like your party's leadership has a handle on this?
I think we got to step back and say we got an amazing country. This country is the greatest country on earth. This country is doing so much better than so many other countries out there. And that's cold comfort when we're in a tough world. But things are changing. The world's getting better, and that material condition of things improving, I think people are feeling. Not enough yet, but it's pretty hard to say people, that Canada's doing better than just about anywhere else when you're not feeling great, right? Nobody wants to hear that. They got to feel it in their lives, and that's our job, to accelerate that goodness, that dawn, to bring it as fast as possible, to lift people up. And I'll tell you, it's something really direct. When I go and talk to a senior who couldn't get dental care, who now can, who's got a pair of teeth in their mouth, how that changes their life and makes their life better. That's a real thing. When I'm talking diabetes patients who now know in British Columbia we have a memorandum of understanding and they're going to be able to have diabetes medication that they need to get better. That's a real thing, right? So you can parlay and play in phantoms and in ghosts and people's anxieties and problems, or you can do real concrete things to show people that this is a great country, getting better, doing extremely well in a tough world. Is that enough? I don't know. I'm not,
Why do you think we're so far down the polls then?
Well, I don't blame people. Who would be happy right now? You tell me an incumbent government that's killing it right now. Incumbent governments everywhere are dealing with a very difficult world. And rightly, when things aren't good in the world, people look to their leaders to make things better. And they're not going to say, great job, and pat you on the back when they're finding things tough. The question is, when you're making a choice about the future of the country and where things go, who do you want there? Do you want somebody who, because I'll tell you what's going to happen. Pierre Poilievre is going to go from blaming us to blaming the provinces. It's going to happen as fast as I can say go. If he gets the opportunity for power, he's going to go from saying everything's broken in this country because of the bad Liberals to everything's broken because of bad provinces. This is a guy who takes no responsibility for anything. So my thing is, you have to be responsible. You have to meet people where they're at, and you have to talk in concrete solutions. That takes time. And one of the things that has to happen is people have to feel and see that the world is getting better, and that's happening.
Monsieur Blanchet dit que le Bloc va voter contre la motion des conservateurs, la motion de non-confiance. Est-ce que vous êtes soulagé d'avoir le soutien du Bloc pour ce premier test?
Pour moi, c'est ici, partout au Canada, quand quelqu'un est élu, je respecte ça. Et c'est important de s'assurer que, comme un gouvernement, on peut travailler avec chaque parti, avec chaque député, mais c'est pas seulement avec une partie ou l'autre. Mais c'est un peu bizarre de dire d'ignorer une partie ou l'autre. S'il y a des priorités communes, c'est important de travailler avec ça. Et ça va changer chaque jour. Un jour, peut-être avec l'MPD, un jour avec les partis, les blocs québécois, et l'autre jour, peut-être les partis conservateurs.
Mais avec le vote de confiance, est-ce que vous étiez nerveux de peut-être face à ce premier test depuis la fin de l'entente? Et est-ce que vous êtes soulagé maintenant que le Bloc dit on va appuyer les libéraux?
C'est mon 5e mandat minoritaire, mon 6e mandat généralement. Pour les premiers 3 mandats, chaque vote de confiance, j'étais vraiment nerveux. Mais ce n'est pas le cas pour moi maintenant. Pour moi, c'est impossible de savoir s'il va y avoir une élection ou pas. C'est important de rester dans le moment, de faire le travail et d'augmenter la qualité de vie des personnes.
Mais vous êtes prêt à aller en élection si vous avez
Toujours.
à le faire?
Toujours. Ça, c'est le cas dans un gouvernement minoritaire. Une élection, tout le temps, c'est possible, mais je pense que le peuple ne veut pas une élection maintenant, ne veulent pas les politiques maintenant. Les personnes veulent les solutions et les esprits de coopération et vraiment la tension sur l'augmentation de qualité de vie. Merci beaucoup.
Rodriguez, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire pour le caucus du Québec? Est-ce que c'est un coup dur pour vous?
Écoutez, il n'y a pas eu grand débat et comme vous l'avez dit, c'est des choses qui ont été discutées au caucus, donc ça reste dans le caucus. Sûrement qu'en temps de lieu, les deux, que ce soit le caucus ou M. Rodriguez, ils vont faire des, comme on dit, des public statements, donc vous allez être au courant.
Il va y avoir un vote de confiance la semaine prochaine, une motion de censure, disons, des conservateurs. Est-ce que vous êtes confiant d'obtenir l'appui d'un des partis d'opposition?
Oui.
Oui?
Très confiant.
Par exemple?
Je ne sais pas si on va pouvoir répondre à toutes les demandes, comme on ne peut pas répondre à toutes les demandes du NPD ou du Bloc. On va en prendre un vote à la fois, on va prendre une situation à la fois, une législation à la fois. C'est comme ça qu'un gouvernement minoritaire fonctionne.
Mais êtes-vous content de savoir que vous allez survivre à ce premier
Depuis
vote de
2021,
confiance?
c'est un gouvernement minoritaire. On a eu une petite exception avec 2 ans là, qui est un peu différent, mais là, c'est une vraie situation minoritaire. Alors, il faut toujours qu'on soit prêt. Et moi, dans le Nord-Ontario, je suis prêt à l'élection, mais je suis heureux qu'on n'aura pas d'élection cet automne. Mais on va continuer à travailler ensemble.
Mr. Serré, can we just get your reaction to Minister Rodriguez leaving cabinet?
Well, I mean, Pablo has done a lot of good work over the years. It's been 10 years. I mean, that's a life of an MP. Well, he's more than 10 years, probably. So I wish him luck. He's a good friend. He's worked hard for the country. He's worked hard to keep Quebec within Canada, which I respect a lot. And I wish him luck. Provincial politics is not my thing. I always prefer federal politics, and I wish him luck.
Are you ready to hit the campaign trail again?
Well, you know, in Northern Ontario, the election 2021, I've been in minority government. I've been ready since the last 2021 for an election. So yes, I'm ready.
Do you still have confidence in the Prime Minister?
Yes, I have. Yes, I think he's still the right person to lead the party and lead the country. And I'm kind of looking forward to campaigning and seeing the visions that we're going to present as a Liberal Party with Justin Trudeau, and also the empty, hateful slogans that Pierre Poilievre has. In my writing, that doesn't work.
Merci.
Damoff, do you feel more comfortable with more PPS officers out here escorting, escorting MPs?
I feel better, but I don't think they should be out there like that. I do feel better with them escorting us across the street, though. Thanks. Sorry, do you know what? When we were in Nanaimo, the police made a line to keep the protesters away, and I don't understand why they can't do that here. They have a right to protest. If they want to do that, fine, but I don't understand why they're allowed to get as close to us as they are.
It is a public sidewalk.
Sure it is, but it was a public street in Nanaimo too, right? If you're, do you think that would be allowed in the States?
Are you going to write to the PPS to ask them to formally do that?
Yep.